Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We continue for today. Now, we have with us Nataliya Humenyuk, Chief of the Joint Coordination Press Office of the Security and Defense Forces in the south of Ukraine, and the briefing will be dedicated in particular to the consequences of the shelling of Odesa over the night. Nataliya Humenyuk, the floor is yours. If to provide brief overview of today's night, there was a foreseen attack. The defense forces informed and warned about the possibility of using kamikaze drones by the enemy. And the air defense forces were ready to quickly respond to the attack. 15 Shahed drones, 131, 136, were launched from the Azov Sea. Using the specifics of our landscape, they tried to launch them through the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson Oblast. Please ask your questions. Don't forget to use the mic and to introduce yourself. Olga Donska, the Fifth Channel. How do you think, was it a kind of a revenge, or what they tried to identify the air defense forces, or was it kind of a scouting? Can they use further missiles? That was a kind of a complex task. Because such attacked with small groups of drones were aimed at the following. For the air defense forces could respond to the first group of drones, and the second one could identify the air defense units, and the third group was aimed on targets. That was the revenge, and we could saw that because there were the signs on the parts of drones for Moscow, for the Kremlin, and they also used the symbols of the special military operation, letters Z and V, that the enemy used to mark their equipment at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. As for the revenge for a specific object or specific action, Moscow and Kremlin, I think we believe that they try to put the responsibility on Ukraine for the quasi-attack that they now show to the world. And they also try to continue their narration. They want the world to believe that Ukraine attack far beyond the borders of its territory and far beyond its competencies. The next question, please, Irina Nazarchuk. Good afternoon. Recently, over the recent weeks, the air defense units have been informing that the enemy has changed tactics. So there is now a deficit of missiles, and that's why they have been using Shaheds, as we have seen it, and non-controlled bombs. What can we expect in the south of Ukraine, taking into consideration the change of tactics and also taking into consideration quite massive attacks on the Kherson Oblast that we've seen over the last 24 hours? I can speak about two zones in the south of Ukraine, the frontline zones that are attacked by the controlled aviation bombs because they can reach those territories remotely, and the enemy does not use them more be reached by our air defense units. That's why they use tactics aviation that can attack outside the zone that is covered by our air defense units and they launch controlled bombs to reach the frontline territories in the Kherson Oblast. And we can see that they have enough stocks to continue such attacks there. There is the lack of missiles now. As for the missiles, we have seen recently the attacks, for example, on Uman, and these attacks, those attacks, they used rather new missiles that were produced under sanctions, under conditions of more complicated production, but they still can produce them. And that's how we can explain the pause that we can also expect for their prestige, for their image. They are ready to use what they could not touch. The next question, if you need translation, this is the first channel.
Can you just a second?
I understood Russia fired 15 Shadow drones. You hit 12. Do you think this is a good result, or maybe Odesa needs to improve its air defense system?
Of course, we will improve our results, but if we compare the situation with the beginning of the start of the full-scale invasion, why does Russia use strategic aviation to launch missiles? Again, they have changed their tactics compared to winter. Now they launch 20 missiles. Why is it so? What are the goals of the Russians? What are they striving for now? The situation in the Black Sea, do they launch missiles from there? And we expect from the shellings and the Russians are capable for missile attacks. They're still capable. The capacity is there. They put their missile carriers with caliber missiles in the Black Sea. They continue to roar terror through their presence in the Black Sea. And they demonstrate their potential. What they showed, for example, overnight, they showed the presence of 4 missile carriers and 32 missiles is quite powerful compared to 4-8 missiles that they showed before that over the last several days. And now, in the Black Sea, there are 7 carriers, including 2 missile carriers, with 16 missiles in total. So we cannot guarantee that all 16 missiles are ready, but this is the maximum that they can carry. But we need to understand that calibers are quite precise weapons, which they can use to target specific facilities. The massive missile attack, but when it is a targeted attack, when they try to find logistics centers to have impact on logistics and the transport infrastructure, they have on many occasions stated that to prevent Ukraine to get weapons, to bring some stocks from the age of our Western parties to the front line, they can attack the transportation routes. We understand this, and we organize the countermeasures. Why do they use strategic aviation? Because they do this because they need to hide their aircraft. They're afraid to have their on their aerodromes closer to the border. They try to bring them inland for those places not to be attacked. The questions. Artem Portfilov, a journalist. Recently, we've seen some delays in the work of the Southern Command with their journalists with regard to yellow zones in Odesa regions. What are the reasons of that, and when we can expect the change of the situation? Thank you for the question. What is the of accompanying? So it is a limited zone, and something can be shown there Or, for example, the city of Kherson belongs to yellow zone, but some other areas of the Kherson region are the part of the red zone. To avoid the maximum amounts of people at the front zone, not to bring additional attention to some specific facilities and objects, the command tries to have different zones, not to provoke like additional attention of our enemy. These are the elements of the hybrid war, and not everyone perceive that as objective conditions, but the conditions not always are in our power. Sometimes we cannot increase the population, and we take measures to demine those territories and counter sabotage measures. You are professionals, and you understand